Hey guys, TommyBryson here, and a long time ago, I read this book by Benjamin Franklin. I don't remember the exact title, but I do remember the main focus. It was all about when you buy something, you have to be very careful what you buy because sometimes when you buy something, it adds more cost to you. Let me explain, okay? Let's say I want to buy my first phone ever. I go ahead, I buy me an iPhone. It costs about $1,000. I'm like, okay, I bought my $1,000 iPhone. Does the expense stop there? The answer is no, because now you have a phone. You have a phone service. You have, for example, subscriptions like, like Apple Music or Spotify, YouTube Premium, or you have insurance on it. You have a whole bunch of things. And before you know it, when you actually run the math, do the numbers, you're probably spending $1,000 more every single year. So sometimes you buy something and that something you buy comes with other expenses. And that's very important because when you go ahead and buy a vehicle, the vehicle isn't just, for example, you finance it or you pay cash for it and that's it. It doesn't stop there. It's also the insurance. It's also the maintenance. It's also the gas you put into it. So all these things are super important. So the vehicle you buy, how you buy it, your budget, all these factors are important, and it makes a lot of people poor because they usually buy a vehicle with the wrong mindset. And in this video, we're actually going to break everything down. As always, guys, like this video and top out also subscribe and hit the bell so you get notified. Now, the first idea I want to erase from your mind is the idea that a vehicle, whether you buy it used or whether you buy it new, is going to be an investment or is something you actually need. I'm not saying that you don't need a car if you have long commutes. I'm not saying, for example, buying a reliable vehicle is not better than buying one that's not reliable, but I am saying 100% that no matter what you do, a car is never going to be an investment because by definition, an investment is something that preserves your capital and also gives you a good return. So if you buy something and it goes down in value, that by all means it is not an investment. Now, that doesn't mean that everything you buy has to be an investment. No. A car is something you buy because you need it, but it's not an investment. So I say this because I know a lot of folks that they're saying, I'm making a good investment here, Tommy. I want to have my money somewhere safe. I want to buy this new vehicle. It's going to be there. This car is reliable. No matter what car you buy, unless you have millions of dollars to buy, for example, fancy old cars that actually hold value and go up in value, whatever car you buy is going to go down in value. So don't justify by saying, I'm buying this car because it's brand new. It's a good investment. It's not a good investment. No matter what you do, it's going to go down in value. I'll talk more about that later on. But the average person, what they do is pretty normal. They go ahead, they buy a vehicle, they tend to finance it. It takes them about 5 years to actually pay it off. When they pay it off, they have a few options, right? They can trade it in, get a new car, or they can basically sell it themselves, get more money on the third-party market, or they can basically just keep the car and ride it until the wheels fall off. And I know some folks like that. For example, Ramit Sethi, he drives a 2011 Honda Civic, if I'm not mistaken, and this guy's a millionaire, and he drives that car. It's like 12, 13 years old, and he's still drives it till this day, and his whole mindset is, I'm not gonna buy a newer car because I'd rather put my money in things I actually like and enjoy. That's fine too, okay? You can have a car, buy it brand new, and ride it until the wheels fall off, and that's perfectly fine. But you have to know what that actually means for your money, your wallet, and your finances, okay? So this is where I'm gonna actually get into the problems when it comes to buying a car. Because again, it seems normal. I buy a car, finance it, 5 years, it's paid off, that's it. What's the big problem here? Well, I'll tell you the problem. The first problem is if you end up financing a car because you cannot afford the car in cash, that basically means you can't afford the car in its totality. Just because you can afford, for example, the monthly payments, it doesn't mean you can afford the car. Anyone can afford monthly payments when you grab a big number and divide it by a lot of dates, okay? For example, most people cannot afford a $500,000 house, but if you give them 30 years to pay it off, they could probably afford it then. Well, afford the payments, but it doesn't mean they can afford the big $500,000 house. So if you find yourself having to finance a car because that's the only way you can basically have it, you can't afford the car. Now, you might say, Tommy, I'm financing the car because I don't want to use my cash to buy the car and then be left with no cash. The answer is that still means you cannot afford the car because you find yourself having to buy something that leaves you with no money. It's obvious you can't afford it. So what is the solution here? Solution is pretty simple. Solution is you look for a vehicle that you can actually afford to pay for in cash. Whether you have a lot of cash and don't want to spend it all in one place, that's fine. I can afford to buy a $10,000 Toyota Corolla, but I probably can't afford to buy a fancy Mercedes that costs around like $80,000 to $90,000 or a G-Wagon that goes for over $200,000. You see what I mean here? So I'm looking for things that I can afford. And there are so many cars out there, so you can't tell me, no, there are no cars available that I can afford. The answer is yes, they are. And if you can't afford the car you actually want, then buy the car you need for the moment. And the car you need is the one you can afford to pay for in cash. Now, here's the second problem. When you buy a vehicle brand new, you think a few things, right? You think, hey, I'm the first one driving this car. I'm going to take care of it. I know exactly how it's been taken care of because I take care of it. I take it to every single maintenance call, whatever, right? You take care of this car like it's a baby. I know someone like this, okay? And you might think, well, I'm making a good investment by buying my car brand new. The answer is, in reality, erase that idea of making a good investment in a car because it's impossible. You won't be making a good investment, whatever you do. But if you buy a car brand new, and your goal is to objectively keep it until the wheels fall off, that might be a good idea. You know, you buy a brand new vehicle, it lasts you around 200 to 250,000 miles. If it's Toyota or Honda, good luck with Mercedes doing that. But that's not that bad, right? It's like 10, 12, 15 years of use. That's fine, right? But for most people, when they actually buy a car, they have to understand they're taking on a major component. And that component is called depreciation. When you buy a car, in those 5 years, usually that car goes down by around 50% in value. And because you are the first owner, the first one that gets to break in the car, well, you get to break in all of that loss in value. So that basically means, you know, for me personally, I would love to buy a brand new vehicle, but again, the math has to make sense. But for the most part, if I'm buying a used vehicle, right? If I buy a vehicle that's like 3 to 5 years old, I get already like a 30 to 50% discount on MSRP price. That is awesome. That's big, right? The car is still like kind of fresh, not that many miles. That's the whole goal, right? And I can basically use that car that I got for half off. And now, since I bought it after the big depreciation factor went away, well, depreciation looks like this in 5 years, right? This is year 1, year 5 right here. It looks like this. It's just like this, right? But when you actually have depreciation from year 5 to year of the life of the car, it looks a lot more like this in a way. Like it's going down in value, but not like this. You're not losing all your money all at once. That's the goal, right? That's not the goal. That's not what you want at all right? Now, here's the third problem I actually want to talk about. You miss a massive opportunity when it comes to investing. You know, you might think that, hey, I'm only spending $500 a month on this car. In 5 years, I'll be done. And that's basically it. But no, what happened if you actually bought a car for $5,000, like, you know, used, you pay cash for it, that's it. And you grab those $500 and put it, for example, in an investment account that makes you like 10% a month, okay? Well, 10% a year. Sorry about that. 10% a year. The answer is, I did the math, and when you actually compound it, it actually makes you somewhere around $38,718.54. So imagine that, okay? Instead of walking out the door with a brand new car that cost 30 grand, 5 years later, you have $15,000 in value. You actually walk out with a $5,000 vehicle, and 5 years from now, you have almost $40,000. Which one do you prefer? The answer is obviously going to be, hey, the cash, right? That's a big deal. It makes a lot of sense. So when you drive around this fancy car, you miss out on that big opportunity. Now, it's not to say that if you actually don't want to invest that money because you already have money to invest, well, that's $500 that you could actually use to go on vacation, to have fun, to enjoy, to spend on things you actually like, you know, instead of a fancy car payment. And by the way, there is one thing I noticed, and here's the fourth problem that I want to mention, right? You do have a lack of peace when you have to worry about making those monthly payments every single month, obviously. And for the most part, when you buy a vehicle, the first few months are probably going to be the best months. It's when you walk in and you feel the car is brand new, you're sitting inside of it, it feels amazing, you feel the new fresh car smell. But then after a few coffee spills and, a few car washes, like all that stuff kind of wears out. And now all you're left is with the car and a bunch of monthly payments for another 4 years or 5 years, right? So that's not what you want. So it cuts into your financial piece, your mentality piece, all that stuff. So for the most part, it's just not worth it. At least for me, it's not. So here's the final part of this video that I actually want to go into detail about. Does that mean you never buy a new car? Because, used cars make more financial sense. And when can I buy a car and how do I buy a car? Like, what's the right math here? Well, it's pretty simple. You want to always pay cash for a car. You want to buy a car that's no more than half of your annual income or 10% of your net worth. So let's say you have $30,000 in annual income. Well, don't spend more than $15,000 in cash to buy a car. But let's say you make $40,000 a year, but you have a net worth of $1 million. You're so good at investing, right? Well, just don't spend more than 10% of that money on an entire car, right? That's the idea. This way, the car you actually drive isn't really hurting you that much, doesn't really feel like much at all. And that's the goal, right? Now, here's the last part here. I agree 100% that buying a new car is never going to be a good investment, is never going to be a good financial decision, but it doesn't mean you can't still make the decision, okay? So if you feel like driving a new car is good for you, but you can afford to pay for it in cash, it's no more than 10% of your income, then go ahead and buy that car and drive it until the wheels fall off. But understand, you're taking a huge cost when it comes to the value of the car is going to go down. But again, it's up to you based on that, but you can afford to watch that money burn because you have the capital to actually be able to do it. So my point is, if eventually I want to buy a new car, which I probably won't, honestly, I'm too cheap. If I want to buy a new car and I can afford to do it without worrying about the payments, without paying cash basically, and without worrying about it being a big percentage of my net worth, the answer is I can buy no problem. But I probably won't do it at all, right? That's my whole idea. But guys, that is it for this video. Cars keep people poor because people buy cars they can't afford. It's not the car's fault, it's the people's fault. The best thing you can do is buy an affordable vehicle, you pay cash for it, and don't worry about payments. Grab that money you're saving, save it, invest it, and just basically multiply it into more wealth. And with that wealth, you can eventually buy the cars you actually want to buy, right? So for the most part, for now, just buy the cars you need. Thanks for watching, guys. As always, like, subscribe, hit the bell to get notified. Up here is another video. Over here is my face. If you made it all the way to this point of the video, I have a question for you. If you could have any car, right? Money wasn't a problem. What car would it be? For me, I think about this a lot, and it would probably be a Tesla Model X. But I worry a lot about like the whole like electrical charging because I do live in a country where we do lose power because there are hurricanes. So that's the big thing. So if it's that, like for electric stuff, Tesla Model X. If it is, for example, like a gas-powered car, it would probably be a Cayenne Porsche. I love those cars. I like cars too, man. I'm just not gonna make terrible investments when I'm not ready just yet. All right, peace.